Okay, are we live? Here, let's hold on and see. Looks like it's trying to connect there. I think we're okay. I think we're live.
Yep.
Let's see if anyone logs in. Okay.
Here we go. Hello, I see ya.
I'm in?
Yep, you're live.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and go. Hi everybody, I'm Sheri Grunska and welcome to Pro Barn Management Live Q&A webinar. And I'm just playing around here because we're having a little bit of trouble with our computer. Let's see here. And are you seeing anyone on there?
Three of us.
Okay, because I'm not getting any notifications. So Trish is gonna let me know what's going on here because it's not working very well. But that's normal for me. So, anyways, hit comments.
Yeah, to see if that happens. No. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm just gonna go ahead and we're gonna just go for it because that's just the way it is. Anyways, there we go. I got a little live thing here. Welcome to Pro Barn Management. Tonight we got a really fun subject, and if you have a question, just you can text me at 920-205-7518, or you can send it via live through Facebook, and Trish will read it to me. We're going to talk about herd management and your boarding stable and your clients, and I'm telling you right now, this is a great subject because herd management, once you have the horses there, gets pretty easy, but there's an element that everybody forgets. I forgot about it. I never even thought about it, actually, is how that transcends to your clients and navigating when things don't go right. And it happens. So we're going to talk about it. So go ahead and if you want to shoot me a question, go ahead and shoot me them. I do have two questions that I want to answer really quick from last week, and then we're going to dive right into herd management since there's so much to talk about. This is a question, I've had two questions on this, so I really want to answer this. And it's about should you put a camera in your barn and have audio so you can hear what people are saying? And so to make it really short, I think legally you cannot have audio. You would have to check with your state and your attorney. But my bigger question is, why would you want to listen to what everyone's saying in the barn? If you have a feeling about a boarder and you're trying to listen in, then there's already deeper issues there. And that is a huge, huge red flag that you guys need to part ways. I trust my clients with everything in our barn, and I would never put an audio in there. I don't want to hear what they're saying. They don't want to hear what I'm saying. And I trust them, and that is a huge part of that. And I've had two questions about that this week. So I know a lot of people, cameras are great for theft, for especially if you have the public coming into your place, or if you want to at nighttime. There's nothing wrong with cameras. A lot of barns have cameras. But audio, I don't want to listen in on my boarders, and I just think it's infringing on their privacy, and I think it is illegal. But I'm not an attorney, so I double check, but I have been told by other people that it is illegal to do. Double check on that, but just if you have to do that, then there's probably some other issues going on there. So I'm going to answer another question here in a minute. But I want to start it on this herd management because there is so much to talk about when it comes to a boarding stable and your herds. And if you have a barn that has all private turnout, individual paddocks, and there are no horses together in herds, then this is not going to apply to you really, because you won't have the dynamics that you have when you have horses together. But most people do have herds of some sort, whether it's 2 horses, 4 horses, 10 horses, and I'm not kidding. If you don't get this part right, you're going to have issues. You could have horses getting hurt much more often than you ever expected. You will also be dealing with very upset clients, and some of the stuff, the residuals of that is people leaving, turnover, and then you're putting new horses in new herds, and it's a vicious cycle, and it keeps going over and over, and you don't want that because it makes your job really hard, makes it really difficult. So we're going to talk about that. Your herd management skills, if you're going to open a boarding stable or you're new to it, I'm going to tell you right now they're going to go through the roof, and what you thought you knew, you're going to have to look back and say, wow, I really didn't know. I guess in my mind, I had to humble myself because I thought I knew a lot about horses and herd management. It turned out that I had to learn a lot more than I ever expected, and the element of the client was a huge part of that. And so you have to be prepared for that because it is your business, and it will reflect on your reputation and what people see as good herd management. I guess to start off, when we're talking about herd management, the biggest thing is if you're going to have groups of herds, the thing I'm going to stress the most is to have as many paddocks as you can make. You will do so much better to have more paddocks and smaller herds. And because, several reasons. First of all, because there is no guarantee that any horse coming on your property is going to get along well with other horses. Most horses somewhat tolerate each other. Some will really become close. But if you're going to be in it for a long haul and you're going to be doing it for years, you are going to eventually have a horse come that is either aggressive or cannot get to the food, this or that, depending on how you feed. And these are all things I want you to think about when you're taking care of other people's horses, because if things don't go right and the horse is stressed, then you're dealing with the owner who's upset, and they have every right to be upset because their animal, their pet, their horse, whatever they want to call it, they are going to be very concerned, worried, and I would be too if it were my horse. Growing up, I had a bad situation where one of our horses was boarded at a place, and the horse, I didn't know enough. I was 15 years old, and the horse was very stressed, and another person had to tell me, and I did not know that. So just something to think about. When you are designing your stable, or you're already buying one and you're looking at how it's set up, you have to remember that the client is a big part of this when it comes to herd management. And what I mean by this is that they have to go out and get their horse. And a lot of your clients, especially new horse owners, it's going to be super intimidating to go into a paddock and try to get their horse out of a group of 10 horses. And if their horse is at the bottom of the barrel and they have to get to that horse and these other horses, it can be very, very intimidating. So I do like smaller herds. I do that for, not only for me, it's easier for me and David, my husband, but it's also, it's more manageable when I need to move a horse, but it's also much better for the client. So I always try to think of them when it's the whole scenario of herd management. And that is a huge part of it. Okay, so we're going to dig into it. Do you have a question?
I had a question.
Okay.
Do you ever have new clients complain that their horse is getting bit when we know it may take time for the herd to allow the new horse in?
Okay, so this is a great question, and that's what we were going to dive into. So what is happening in the herd, you'll see it one way, and hopefully most of your clients will see it the same way, but there's a really good chance you're going to have a client that doesn't understand what's going on, or they see it a different way. So when you're introducing a horse to a herd, There's, they're going to be squealing. There could be hooves flying. There could be nicks. You try not to have any of that. In a perfect utopia world, wouldn't that be great if that never happened? And we try our hardest not to have that happen. But when you have the client there and they're getting upset at that, when is it time to move a horse? When is it time to say everything's okay, or this isn't working, or how do you deal with the client? Well, a couple things. We have horses that have been here for years, 10 years, and usually it's always geldings. You could have a group of geldings that are together and they play constantly, and they play face tag. And you know what I'm talking about, face tag, where they're all over there and they're just all kind of making a mess on each other. And we have a couple horses that they get little nicks all over them, and it's from their teeth. But the thing is, they're playing. In those situations, I've had to talk to the owners, and the owners both understand. They all understand that the horses are playing, and they are perfectly fine with it. But that's how horses communicate. They take little nibbles out of each other. You'll find a little patch of hair missing. And you have to think, okay, what kind of barn do I have? If you have someone who's showing a horse and their horse is a halter horse and it cannot have any marks on it at all, then that boarder, it probably would be better for them to do private turnout, especially during show season, if that's what you're going to do. And we have had boarders that do that during show season in the summer. Their horses go on private turnout because they don't want their horse nicked up, and they have a horse that's a player, and their horse plays all the time. The problem comes in sometimes is when you have someone that doesn't understand the difference between playing and fighting and aggressive behavior. And horses are big animals, and sometimes when they play, it's rough. You're going to be doing some educating in this, and I wish I could say it always has a happy ending, but sometimes it doesn't. You may have a client that just can't handle it, and then you give them the option: do they want private turnout, or they may say, can I move my horse to another herd? But the problem is, once the herds are all established, if you start moving horses, then you've got this situation going in all over the place. It also depends on the horse. They might have a horse that is the instigator and is always playing all the time, causing all the ruckus out there, chasing horses, and he's the one that ends up getting marked up, but he's the instigator. The owner of that horse may not even know that, and you might have to teach, talk to them and kind of educate them, and even have them come out and watch their horse to show them what is going on. It can get a little complicated sometimes if the owner gets upset, but at the end of the day, and this is where, as the barn owner and the barn manager, you have to make a decision and you have to stand by it. And I've made decisions that sometimes boarders did not like, and sometimes they have left because they didn't like that I was not willing to move all these horses around because their horse is getting nicked up, but their horse was clearly the instigator. It's like, I'm just not going to do it. And then there are times when I will move a horse when I realize that there's a better option for this horse. And I've had people put their horse on private turnout. I'm willing to work with a boarder, but at some point as a business owner, you have to draw the line and just say, this is how it is, and this is how we do it here. You cannot fix every single scenario you're going to have. It would be too vast. It would be too crazy to do that unless you put every horse in bubble wrap in private turnout. No one's going to do that. So that's, you're going to be dealing with clients, sometimes talking to them. The other part of it too is, and this is not to diss any boarders at all, because I boarded horses for years, and so I've been on both sides of the fence. I know what it's like to have my horse at a place and worry about them, and I know what it's like now to be a barn owner. And you are going to have boarders sometimes that maybe don't have the same idea of what good herd management is. It doesn't it doesn't mean you have to do what they say. You can listen to what they're saying. You clearly should always be trying to learn and make sure that you're educating yourself and doing things with the best interest of the horse at heart. But if you get someone that has an idea or they're seeing a different thing that you're seeing, you might have to just say, this is how I do it here. You cannot control what everybody thinks out there, and sometimes people have a different idea of herd management than others, and they, in that situation, unfortunately, they need to find a barn that kind of works with what they believe. So I hope that answers the first question.
You have another one kind of related.
Okay.
If a horse gets hurt integrating into a herd, who pays the vet?
Okay. So if a horse gets hurt integrating into a herd, in our contract, they are, when I give them a tour, so we're going to go back here a little bit. When I give someone a tour, I'm explaining exactly how we do things. Exactly. So that means it always comes up, how do I introduce a horse into a herd? And I'll tell you how I do that in a minute, but let me go on to say, when they sign my boarding contract, they are signing that they agree with how I do things, and they agree and they feel comfortable that I am taking good care of their horses, and they're agreeing with everything I've said to them. So, in that situation, when there is no guarantees ever in herd management, ever. So don't ever think that there is, because there's not. But what I do is I never put a new horse into a herd of horses, ever. What I do is I take the new horse, and when I'm ready and I know which herd I'm going to put him with, I put him in a paddock by himself, in that paddock, and I introduce him to one horse out of that herd. One horse that I think will be a good fit. Because my goal is to get him to be a buddy. I need to see what he's going to do. I need to see if he's aggressive, if he's timid, if he's going to be just running around crazy, if he's going to be calm. See, the problem is probably 90% of your clients won't even know how their horses are in herds, especially if they're newer. Once they've been around horses a while, there's a good chance they're going to know. But if you get new people coming in and they have a new horse, they may not even know how that horse is, because when they bought the horse, they maybe didn't know to ask, or it just somehow gets lost. So now you have to figure out how that's going to go. So I personally do not put a new horse in with a group of horses. I put them in with one horse, and I let them get their bearings, water, hay, everything, kind of figure it out, all the smells, and then slowly I'll introduce another horse to that herd. If I have a situation where I see a horse getting aggressive with this new horse that I just put in, and he happens to be the dominant horse in that herd, if I think there's going to be a problem, I may pull him out for a day or two and take the wind out of his sails and let the new horse get his bearings, get his confidence up. Because what happens in it too is you have to realize that, I could talk for hours on this, but there is also the element of the history of the horse. And a perfect example, I'll tell you a story about a horse that came to us years ago, and he came here, the people had purchased him, and he had been a show horse on the quarter horse circuit forever. In his life, this horse's life, he had never been in a herd. He was raised as a baby and then trained, and then he had lived his life for years in a stall. So he had like no social skills. He just didn't even know what it was like to be in a herd. And it was probably the longest adjustment I had here at this barn. It took like a month to get him adjusted. Once he did, he flourished, and he stayed here until he finally passed away last year. And he was so happy, but it was an adjustment. And the other one, off the track thoroughbred, sometimes when they've been on the racetrack and they've just been in stall at this track, that track, they have not been in herds. Those are also sometimes a little bit hard to get acclimated into a herd, and it takes time and it's a slow process. So I never throw a horse into a herd because it can be overwhelming, especially for horses like that. They have no idea what's coming sometimes. And one more quick story. We have a paint I bought for my daughter the horse was 10 years old, but the horse had lived from 5 months up until 10 years old when we bought it in someone's backyard with just a mare. That was it. No other horses. The horse had no contact with other horses for all those years. She never took the horse off the property, never broke the horse. And yes, you're probably thinking, why would you buy your daughter a horse like that? He turned out to be a really neat horse. But the huge thing was he had never been around another gelding. It was like he didn't even know what to do with other horses. And it was a huge adjustment for him. And I can remember the first time I put him out with a group of horses and with my horses, and he was kind of freaked out over it, and now it's like we've had him forever and it's not a big deal, but there's that transitioning. So that's why it is so important to find out the history of the horse. When you're doing herd management, you always have to remember that these people are paying you a lot of money for the care of their horse. And yes, accidents happen, but you have to remember that they're paying you to learn as much as you can so that you can try to get it right. And this is where I'm going to answer your question. So what do you do? Who's at fault when you put a horse in a herd and the horse gets hurt? So when they sign the contract, you need to have it written up so that protects you from something like that. Now, that's why I only introduce one horse to the new horse at a time, just one at a time, and take it real slow. Does that mean they could start kicking at each other? Of course. Does it mean that I could see a red flag and I need to get the horse out of there? Yes, and I've done that where I've had to pull that horse out of there right away or make a change and think this isn't working. But if something happens to the horse, the boarder signing the contract is responsible for that. Now, could they come back and say you were negligent? They could try, but that's why you have your care, custody, and control insurance. I've never had that happen to me. I've never had those situations happen, and I've had horses get hurt here for different reasons. But a horse can get hurt the first day. They usually say, and I remember reading this, and it really is true, the horses, if they're going to get hurt a lot of times or get nicks on them, it's usually like within the first 2 days, the first 48 hours when they're trying to figure out each other and stuff. But I've never had a horse get really major seriously hurt from that. But I have had kicks, even from horses that I wasn't even expecting at the time. And you have to watch them. You have to watch them closely. I have not had anyone come at me over that, they sign a contract, they know how I do it. It's kind of like, I had someone ask me once, if my blanket gets ripped, if my horse's blanket gets ripped in the paddock from another horse, does that other person have to pay for my blanket? And no, they don't. If your horse is in a paddock and the blanket keeps getting ripped from another horse because the horse is pulling on it, you knew going into that boarding stable that your horse was going to be in a group of horses. This usually is geldings. This usually happens with, and you knew that was going to happen. So that you are taking on that chance, and that is part of boarding. You wish it's all perfect, but unfortunately, it just doesn't go that way with animals, and they're big animals. So I have not had anybody come after me for a horse that got hurt. I haven't had a serious injury introducing them, but I only introduce one at a time. And I go slow. And I am quick to pull a horse if I feel there's a huge red flag and get them out of that paddock and rethink how I'm going to do that. And that's why it's so important to have smaller herds, I believe, and a lot of different choices of paddocks, because there's a good chance you're going to be moving horses. I think the most I've had to move a horse is to 3 different paddocks to find a herd that was really compatible for him. And yeah, it's a lot of work. But you know what? If you do the work in the beginning and get it right, you're going to have happy horses. You'll have happy clients. And they'll stay a long time because they know their horse is happy, their horse is thriving. You just have to find the right horse. If you are a stable that's set up and you only have 2 paddocks, you're kind of out of luck if you need to move that horse. So that's why it is really important to have as many paddocks as you can so you can move horses around when you have one that's not getting along. Do you have a question?
We have 2 more questions that don't immediately relate to herd management.
Mm-hmm.
First one is, what do you do with a horse that has never been in an electric fence?
Okay. I'm kind of laughing because I'll tell you a story. So we had a horse many years ago. In fact, I'll never forget it because it was July 4th. It was in the morning. And it was summer, and this big, huge appendix quarter horse came to our barn, and this horse had been at a show barn, so it had not been out in a paddock or anything. And I put it in a private turnout because I wanted to see how it was going to do in just a private turnout for one day, a couple days. I put it in there, and within the first, 2 minutes, the horse touched the fence, and instead of backing away from the fence, it ripped through the fence. So now it's tore down this fence, ripped through it, went running about 200 yards straight, and then ran into my horse's fence and knocked it down too. So it ran out of its paddock, and then it ran into my horse's paddock, tore the fence down, and went into my horse's paddock. So it was absolutely nuts. I couldn't even believe it. So I called the owner, and I said, we have a little problem here with the fencing. And anyways, we just took it really slow. We kept the horse on a long lead with a halter on and got him used to the fence. And he was fine. We use electrobraid fencing. A lot of people use all different kinds of stuff. I like it a lot for this area with this weather, and I've never had a horse get hurt on electrobraid. And I've had horses pull the fence down, through the years, a strand or something. This horse actually went through it and then went through my paddock. So it was crazy, but got some rope burns, but never got hurt. And bad. And so I'll ask people, most horses have been around electric fencing, but if you get a horse that hasn't, then you're going to want to go slow. You're going to definitely want to take them in a paddock. They're going to have to get shocked sometime just to know it's there. But if you can, if you think the horse is going to do something crazy like that, you can keep them on a long lead and just, kind of see what they do and take it slow. That was probably the worst experience I ever had, and that was years ago. And after that happened, I never had a problem with the horse again. We put him back in that same paddock, and he was fine. It was just, that horse was so reactive, and when it just kept going. It just decided to destroy all kinds of fencing. But that was probably the worst case scenario. So I hope that answers that question. Okay.
Do you want another one?
Sure.
What's the magic number you think that fits well for the maximum in a herd?
Okay. I don't know if this is a magic number for me. Okay. Everyone's got a different magic number, but this works for me. We've never had a herd larger than 6 horses. And right now, we only have one herd with 6, and we have several with 4 or 5. I love those numbers, but again, I have lots of paddocks. So I have lots of horses all over, and it works. You can do more than that. I mean, people do it, but when you get big numbers of horses and they start running, they start doing this, or someone's out trying to get their horse, it's really intimidating, and it gets kind of crazy. But I like a smaller herd myself. It just is really manageable with everything. So that's how we have our largest size is 6. We've never gone over 6 ever, and 6 works nice. I think it works really nice. Also, real quick, since we're talking about herd management and the herds, it also a huge part of this whole thing is how you're going to feed your hay outside. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of the issues that you'll come across if you're going to board horses and have herds, and what I've seen happen for problems, what I've seen work for successes. So I know a lot of people will feed like round bales out in a paddock, a large paddock, and then the horses can just eat off of it all they want. But some of the situations that you could have as a problem are if you have a herd out there and you have a, let's say you have a dominant horse who's a kind of food aggressive, and then you have a real timid horse, there is a good chance that some of the horses that are timid might not be able to get to the round bale as often. And you could end up with a situation where it causes stress in some of those other horses. So in that case, you either have to put out a couple round bales and rethink that, how you want to do that depending on the size of your herd. The other part of that is I did see once driving by a stable years ago, someone had a round bale out, and the round bale, as it started to go down, the top horse just laid right on top of the round bale, like just climbed up on it and was like sacked out. So now he's laying on everyone's food. Don't get the food. Some people are fine with it. I just always look at it as how you do things in a business is maybe a little different than what you do with your own horses. If it's your own horses, you can do that kind of stuff and not worry about it. But when you're dealing with other people's horses, it's very upsetting to drive into the barn and see everybody eating and their horse is standing out alone because they can't get to the food because the other horses are shooing them away. Part of having a stable that has a really good reputation and very low turnover and good herd management are some of these things that you have to think through. I'm not going to sit here and say you have to do it this way. I'm just telling you some of the problems that could arise. Now, what we do is for every paddock that we go into to feed, we feed individual piles. So if there's a paddock with 4 horses, then we'll feed 4 individual piles all spread really apart, and it's great. You have less chance of the horses getting hurt because when the dominant horse goes and kicks off a less dominant horse or a timid horse, he has a hay he can go to, and they're just constantly moving. They're moving, they just circle around, and it's not where they have to fight for the same hay, the same spot. So in the long run, I really believe you have less accidents when it comes to that. So we do it. It's a little bit more time consuming because we have to feed twice a day, Well, we feed in the morning outside and then the horses come in at night. But if you have outdoor boarded horses, you would feed twice a day. When I say outdoor boarded, I mean like rough board. They're out 24/7 with a shelter. So then you would do it twice a day. And that's how we've done it, and it's always worked great. We use a 4-wheeler with a wagon, and we just go out there and we feed the hay and drive around each pile and dump the hay off. It's super quick, and then when we get the horses out in the morning, the hay's out there. And they just rotate back and forth, and it's easy. It gives them a little exercise, and you have a lot less accidents because you're always going to have a hierarchy. You're always going to have your top horse all the way down, and they're constantly going to be pushing horses off the hay and moving them around until they've had a little bit of hay for a while, and then they all kind of settle in. So I am a huge believer in doing it that way. Even though it's a little bit more work, it really makes for really stable herds and less accidents, and the horses seem much less stressed. So that's kind of my thought when you're dealing with herd management and a boarding stable situation. And like I said, if you're doing this for your own private horses, you can do it however you want because of your horses. Just remember, when you're taking care of other people's horses and they're paying you for this service, you just want to think, what is the healthiest, best way to do this and the less stress? And you want people to stay there for a long time. And if you don't have people leaving all the time, then you don't have this change in herds all the time. And it really just all is a big circle that comes full circle and makes for a strong business in the end, if when you think of those things. Do you have another question?
We have a question that you may have answered earlier.
Okay.
How do you decide what horse may go well with another when you haven't known the new horse for a long time?
So sometimes I'll get a horse come in. I have no idea. The people don't know what the horse's background is. They don't know his personality. And I'll usually put him by himself for a couple days and kind of just watch him, see if he's nervous, see if he's calm, laid back. The horses that have been here, I know like my children. I know every one of them. They've been here for years, their personalities. So then I kind of have an idea of who is a good horse, who is a horse in our group, this group, that is like the horse that visits everybody. He greets everybody, all that. Or which horse is the one that tends to be the more dominant, that's kind of the crab. They all have personalities, and you kind of learn which ones are the happier horses that nothing bothers them, and then the horses that are tense are the ones that maybe have to act big, and so they're going to try to push their weight to the new horse and say, hey, you know what, I'm at top of you, I'm the boss here. And but I have called it wrong a couple times. When I've done it, I thought, oh, this will be a great mix, and it turned out it wasn't. And then the one horse that I thought would be the most difficult ended up being the one that bonded with the new horse. It's so awesome to watch because you never know. You get a good sense of it, but once in a while they surprise you. And so it's a lot of knowing the horses you have. And the funny thing is, when we first opened in 2005, it's crazy when I think back to that, because within 2 months I had like 40 horses here. I didn't know any of them. All I knew were my 4 horses. I didn't know any of the others, and I had no idea. I was putting them in groups and this and that, and I was exhausted. And it was a mess. It was a real mess. And so now it's gotten so much easier because I know the horses here. I know right away if a horse isn't feeling good, if they're agitated that day, if they're stressed, if the mare's acting marish, or if they're just real laid back. So you get a real sense, just like you would your own kids. You kind of just can read them so well. So it makes it easier when I'm thinking about putting in a new horse. Okay.
The last question doesn't relate to this topic, but it says, do you quarantine new horses? And if so, how and how long? Okay.
Do I quarantine horses? I don't. And some of you are probably going with your mouth wide open. I don't quarantine a new horse. I will put them in a paddock by themselves for a couple days just to kind of keep an eye on them and see what their personality is. But I kind of look at it this way, and some people may think I'm irresponsible about it, but this is how I've done it for 15 years, and it's worked great. They have all their shots. They have everything coming into our barn. We have horses that go to horse shows. We have horses that go trail riding, that go to clinics all over, go out of state. If that were the case, I would be quarantining horses all the time. So we had a situation a few years ago where the woman who was coming to our barn, there was an outbreak, and it happened in that barn, and the barn had to be quarantined, and she could not bring her horses to our barn until the horses had been tested twice, and then another 2 weeks had gone by. And so it took like a month before her horses could ever come to our barn, and it had to be vet approved. And I was okay with that because the vets gave the green light on that one. But, you know, we have horses going everywhere all the time. So if that were the situation, you'd be quarantining all the time. And I don't do that. But a lot of barns do. And there are barn owners right now that'll think I'm being irresponsible. But the thing is, I've seen barns do everything right, and they still can have a strangles outbreak, or they can still have this or still have that. And it's not that I'm poo-pooing it. I'm just saying I feel comfortable with the setup I have here, making sure that I've done my homework to make sure every horse and background has been checked first before the horse comes off the trailer into our place. So that works for us. And I let people know that, the people know that are here, and they trust me on that. So I hope that helps. I know I see, you know,
all of a sudden they're coming.
I know. So I got to tell you guys, it's kind of weird. As I'm doing these for the last few weeks, I haven't been able to see any comments or anything on the left here, and all of a sudden they started popping up out of the blue. I don't know why. So anyway, so I hope that answers your questions. There's nothing wrong with quarantining. You can definitely do it, and you know, there's not a problem with that at all. But I'm just saying, I'll be honest with you, I have not done it, and it's okay. You know, it's worked okay because I make sure everything else is done right with that horse. You know, I'm not going to let a sick horse come here. So I hope that helps.
How do you manage a horse that gets sick with something that's highly contagious?
So you're going to want to have a stall that you can quarantine the horse to, and then you're going to want to be, you know, in contact with your veterinarian right away. The vet will need to be out there, and also you need to let your boarders know right away, and that's basically it. Just be open and honest with your boarders. Don't hide something. Just let them know this is what's going on. It happens. There's nothing you can do. Just like people, we get sick, things happen, and so just be upfront with and then have a stall that you can quarantine a horse into if that's the situation. So,
do you require strangles vaccination?
Okay, so strangles vaccination. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not a veterinarian, but I do go by what the vets say around the area. So I just want you to know that because I'm not a vet. So I do require it, but not for the real senior horses and that are in their 20s and stuff like that. So just the very old horses, like my mare is in her 30s and she hasn't gotten it in years, and I follow what the vets say on that. When they get that old, we don't do that. So that, I hope that helps. But definitely for the younger horses, yes. Okay, I got a lot of questions here. I want to talk a little bit more about herd management, just because I want to make sure I covered everything out there. The one thing with herd management, for those of you that are doing outdoor board and not stall board, or you're doing both, if you're going to do outdoor board, rough board, we have smaller herds for that. We've only done 3 horses for outdoor board in a paddock, no larger than that, because the run-in shelter is, it'll fit 3 horses real nice. But it's really stressful if you have bad weather and a horse can't get into the run-in because of they're scared to get in there because the other horses are aggressive. So you want to make sure of that. And that is a huge problem, I think, with some of the places. They wonder why the clients are upset, and it's because their horse can't even get in the shelter. So if you're going to have shelters out there, and then you're going to choose to leave the horses out in all kinds of weather, then you have to make sure you have enough shelters or small enough herds so every horse can get in the shelter. Otherwise, it really doesn't do any good, and then you end up with horses that are shivering or whatever the situation be. And I think it reflects on your business, and it stresses out some of the horses. especially the horse that can't get out there. So you have to remember that when you're doing outdoor board, make sure the horses all can get in the run-in if they need to, and you'll have a much healthier atmosphere for everybody, for your clients, for the horses. It just works so much nicer. Okay. I wanted to talk also about herd management and some of the things that people forget to think about are the age of a horse when they're doing their herds. So I've heard some horrible stories where someone purchased a real young horse, maybe a 7-month-old baby, and they took it to a boarding stable and they threw this baby in with 10 other horses, and they just kicked this little baby to pieces. If you're going to be dealing with really young horses or extremely old horses, then I would recommend making a separate situation where that youngster can be with maybe 1 or 2 other horses, and horses that will kind of teach him, or that he can play and kind of grow and mature. But if sometimes horses are really hard on each other, and they can really hurt each other. And so we've had a lot of babies when I was younger. We don't have them anymore. But I've had a lot of babies come here that are like 5 months old. And, we've always had them in separate paddock with maybe another older horse or another couple horses, just to get them to grow and get bigger before we felt comfortable putting them in with a herd, because I didn't want to take a chance on them getting hurt. Now, someone may disagree with me on that, and they may want to just put that horse into another herd. But boy, if something happens, you will just regret it for the rest of your life, and it's just bad for your business too. It's just bad all the way around. It'll make you sick inside. So I'm really, I'm super careful with really senior horses, and that are getting up there in age, pretty high up there, and also the really young ones. We make special accommodations for them in much smaller herds and with horses that I know they're going to get along with. Sometimes with the senior horses, they're just with one other horse when they're up there in the high 20s, early 30s, and they need that. It's just very stressful on them when they're around a lot of young horses, and they don't want to be fooling around with all those shenanigans and stuff. And so it's just something to think about if you're going to board horses and you're talking about herd management. These are some of the extremes on both ends. Then you got the middle ground where it's much easier. But then you've got horses coming from different history and different backgrounds and stuff. So I'm just talking about this stuff to get you to think about that. Not only that, but it'll kind of help you know some of the questions to ask when someone comes to board. And what I mean by that is, now where I am in my life, if someone were to call me up with a yearling, I would tell them that we're not taking any yearlings right now, any very young horses, and we just don't anymore. And in fact, I had a call a couple weeks ago, and someone had just purchased like an 8-month-old, and I just said, no, we're not taking any. And that's why you want to know what you want for your herds and your boarding stable. It's important, because if you say yes to every horse that comes, boy, you're going to make your job tough if you're not set up for it. Those are really, I feel, important things to think about to make your life a little easier, and for the stability of the animals. So,
got some more questions.
Okay.
How do you manage herds when you have hard keepers and easy keepers and don't have a way to group similar keepers together? We tend to group by personality, but then it's a feeding challenge.
If you're live, I don't know who that's from. Who's that from?
Kara Pope Temple.
Oh, hi, Kara. Okay, so I would have to look at your paddocks and see how many you have and what the situation is, and how you're feeding. And that's where I was talking about, like, if you have round bale or if you have individual piles of hay. Is it outdoor board? Is it stall board? I guess, are the horses coming in at night, or are they outside 24/7? That is one of my questions. So when you feed, so what happens is if you have, like, let's say you feed round bales, which a lot of people do, and there's nothing wrong with it, but if you have easy keepers, those easy keepers keep getting easier and easier. They keep putting on the weight, and then sometimes that leads to other medical issues. And that's my dog, sorry. Daisy. And Daisy. That's my dog again. Can you find David? Thanks. So, but if you have light horses that are having a hard time keeping weight on, that is why I'm a huge believer in individual piles, where they can always have hay, get the hay they need, and they just keep moving. We have horses in our barn. They go out during the day, but if they are young, or they're in heavy workload, or they're like a thoroughbred and they're a hard keeper, then we will add more hay in at night in their stall. So in the stall, I can really monitor and make sure that the hay is, a good amount of hay for them. But if it's outside during the day, it's a little bit harder. We feed individual piles, and then what I do is I just keep in communication with the owner, and we talk about the weight of the horse, and if I need to double the hay, I will in the stall. As long as the horse is eating it, I'm not going to charge any extra for that. And so that's how we do it here. If the horses are outside 24/7 on outdoor board, yeah, you are putting them together for personality, and you're doing that in all your paddocks. But sometimes with outdoor boarded horses, especially in cold weather climate, the ones that are hard keepers, boy, they really struggle in the winter, and then they end up losing more weight. It could be a little bit of a vicious battle. And I think through the years, I think there was one particular time where someone had a horse here that I know of. The horse just was having a heck of a time keeping weight on outside and outdoor board, and it was a nervous horse, and we suggested that the horse take a stall so that the horse could come in at night, and within like 3 months the horse put on a whole ton of weight, so that really helped. So outdoor board is more challenging, but the horses that are in their stall at night and then go out during the day, it's not a problem at all, because we can feed individually once they're in their stall, and definitely give the horses that need more nutrients more, and it works out really good. So
okay, another question.
uh-huh
If a mare is in heat when you are ready to put them in together, do you wait if mare or gelding? That's how it was worded. I'm not sure.
I see right here. If the mare is in heat when you're ready to put them in together. So I'm assuming you're talking about a mixed herd in together. So if it's not a mixed herd, I don't wait. I just do it like normal. And we have a couple mares that, wow, they come into heat a lot. It's like, come on. And but if it's a mixed herd, you really have to know the geldings, and the mares. Sometimes it's not gonna work. But a lot of times, if the gelding is just like has no interest at all, ever in any mares, then that mare settles down. And it's kind of like the chemistry. It's funny how you'll see some horses will be with a horse and nothing ever happens. All of a sudden, a new horse comes in, and the horse goes crazy. It's so we have a mixed herd and we don't have a problem with it. But my mares aren't marish. It's the only one we have, but we've had other ones in the past. Usually the problem I have right now is that we have a group of mares, and one of the mares is marish a lot, and we have geldings next to her, and then she puts her butt right up to the fence. So then we have to, sometimes we have a problem with the fence because she'll kick her leg out and pull the bottom strand down, and she's just a very marish mare. And So I haven't had to, it's just sometimes you do deal with a horse like that, and it's hard, you kind of just every day kind of see which mood she's in. Thank goodness it's not every single day, but some mares definitely are more than others, especially if you get a little bit of warm weather.
An older question here said, do you charge more for private turnout?
Yes, I do charge more for private turnout. And I charge more in the winter time because I have to heat the water for those private turnouts. So I charge more year round for private, and then in the winter it's even a surcharge for the water. So I hope that helps. Okay. So one of the things I want to talk about, and we have about 5 minutes left. A couple other things I want to talk about with herd management. This is a question I get asked quite often, believe it or not, because it seems to be a lot of issues in a lot of barns. And that is, do I allow back shoes on the horses that come here? And I'm going to tell you right now, you can do it however you want. I allow back shoes. We have lots of horses with back shoes and lots of horses that don't. It depends on the horse. We had one horse years ago that was a pretty tough mare, and she was one of those very dominant and a double barreler. I mean, when she kicked, it was both. And she would have been one that I would have said no back shoes to, but she didn't wear shoes. And I know some people, everyone's got their own thought on this, so I don't want to diss anybody. But if a horse is kicking hard enough, whether they have a back shoe or not, they can't, they can do damage. I have not had an issue with it, but I've had clients that have had an issue with it. And so I had a situation years ago where someone did not want their horse put into a paddock, a herd, because there was a horse in there that had back shoes. And I said, and the horses all got along great. There wasn't even a sign of anything, but she wanted her horse pulled. And I wasn't going to do it because I felt that now I have to disrupt 2 herds to move this herd. And there could be a horse with back shoes next month if a new horse came in. So in that situation with her, after I talked to her, because she was very upset about, that's my dog again. I'm sorry. Is David around? No. I'm sorry, it's my dog. And I had a long talk with this woman, and she ended up leaving our barn. She wanted to be at a barn where back shoes were not allowed. And there are barns like that out there. I don't have a problem with back shoes. My horses have had back shoes when they were being shown. And, it just depends on the horse. But, first of all, if I said no to back shoes, I would not have some of the clients I have here now that have wonderful horses. And, they're wonderful people. So I allow back shoes. And so I hope that helps with that question. That's usually one that I get asked because it seems to be a problem in barns. And that's because you have people that are nervous or scared or, this or read something here. If you go on the internet, you can read anything and you have to make up your own mind. And I'm kind of one of those people, okay, I'm going to just sit back and breathe here a little bit. I'm not going to make any rash judgments, and I'm going to see how the horse acts. So I do allow back shoes. And the other thing too is this is not, you can do it however you want. I'm not saying one way is right or the other, but in herd management, I have just found we don't leave the halters on unless it's a breakaway halter for a horse that has a head issue. And people will ask me that, and the reason being is, for one thing, I don't want to dink around with grabbing people's halters off the stall door and stuff, because a lot of times it just takes more time. I have my own halters that I put on the horse, we get him outside, and we take it off. But also geldings sometimes, boy, they start pulling on each other's halters, and they're doing this, and the halters get muddy and wet, and it's like, ah. So I don't do that in our herds, and that's just something out of people just ask, and just out of curiosity. And one of the biggest questions is when horses don't get along, what do you do? And so it happens, and when they don't get along, I move them. And sometimes the owner of the horse is not happy with that decision that I have to move a horse, and if it's theirs. But once you do it long enough, you realize you have to do what's best for the entire stable and your business. You can't just do what's best always for one person. I try to please everybody, and I want them all to be happy with where they board, but it's impossible. I mean, reality is you can't do it all. And so sometimes you have to make a decision and you have to move a horse, and you realize doing that you could lose a boarder. And you just have to say, okay, what am I willing to weigh out on that? And I haven't had to do that in a long time, because what happens is when you start a boarding stable, usually in the first 2 years is when it's kind of all chaos and you're trying to figure out how it all works. And that's normal. That happened to us. And then you kind of start making changes, and you lose people because you're making changes, and then you're redoing this and doing that. And by the 5th or 6th year, it starts to really mellow out and kind of come to a plateau, and you kind of just, it gets real easy. And all of a sudden one day you wake up and you think, oh, it's a lot easier. The job's a lot easier. And that's what I want you guys to get to. I want you to get to, oh, I'm sorry about my dog. I want it to get to be to the point where it's just a lot easier. I don't know where my husband is to get this dog. So I hope that helps. We are at 1 hour right now. Do you have one more question?
I do. If you feel so confident about horses wearing the back shoes, would you assume the liability for a shod accident in that case?
You know, that's a situation where you have a boarding contract, and when someone comes to your barn, they understand. You tell them that I do allow back shoes. They have taken the responsibility of saying, okay, I'm willing to accept that. Anything can happen anytime. That's why you want your boarding contract to make sure it is written by an attorney, it is current, it is there, written in a way so that the boarder understands. They can't come back and say, well, you said there was no back shoes, or you never told me this. When you give a tour and you're explaining all these things, they also should be asking the right questions, things that bother them. So to me, back shoes do not bother me. My horses being in with any horse with back shoes, it doesn't bother me. But to someone who it does, then they need to go to a barn where they don't allow them. They need to go to a stable where they don't allow back shoes. But if they're going to choose to be at that barn and they know you allow back shoes, then it's their responsibility, because you cannot control what the animals are going to do all the time. Nothing may ever happen for 10 years and then all of a sudden, whack, one day the horses are in a bad mood and they kick each other, and all of a sudden a horse gets hurt. At that point, it's, there's enough risk in having this kind of business anyways, but you have to kind of sit back and say, you know what, I'm just going to breathe on this, run my barn the way I do, be really open and honest to how I do things, be transparent. And I can't tell you someone's never going to sue you. I've been sued over the years. I can't say it's always going to be perfect, but make sure you have everything in place, the right kind of insurance, all this stuff, so that if something does happen to a horse and a horse gets hurt and has to be put down, and this person who is just crushed all of a sudden wants to blame it on something, make sure you're covered. Just be smart, make sure you're covered, and do things the right way. There are no guarantees, and they need to understand that it needs to be written in your boarding contract. And that is probably the most important thing of this whole thing tonight, is your boarding contract. Make sure it's written so that if something does happen to a horse, you are covered. We've had a horse break a leg here. To this day, we never knew how it happened. It was actually a shoulder, had to be put down. We've had a horse die of a heart attack. Lots of crazy stuff through the years. And you don't know what happens, but the owner is crushed, and they want to find out what happened. They want to blame. They want to know, did that horse do it? Did this horse do it? So to protect yourself as a business owner, have everything in place, do it the right way, get yourself covered correctly, and make sure your boarding contract reads this so that when someone signs that and they bring their horse, they understand that they're taking the risk. They know you allow back shoes, and if something happens, then that's on them. So I hope that answers your question. One more thing too, since we're going to be going here in 1 minute. And this is something I didn't cover, but I'm going to cover it real quick here. There's the other side of the coin when the barn manager is negligent. And I think, how do I say this? I think that there probably are people out there that shouldn't be taking care of other people's horses out there. They don't know what they're doing, or they don't care, or they have a situation that maybe is a little abstract to what horse care is. I don't know it all. I'm still constantly learning. But as a boarder, as a horse owner, it's your responsibility to know what kind of stable you're going to. But also as a barn owner, can I encourage you to keep learning? And if you have a problem, ask someone. If you're not sure about what's going on in a herd, have another set of eyes. Look at it. That is another professional, not a boarder, but a professional. Look at the situation and see what is going on with these horses. Sometimes it's the smallest change that can just change a horse's personality or make things work right. And keep learning. If you make a mistake, it's okay. Don't say, oh my gosh, I'm the I'm the worst barn owner ever. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've had to learn so much through the years, and still once in a while things don't go right when I'm putting horses together. Like sometimes I'll put a horse together, I'm like, wow, that caught me off guard. I thought they were gonna just hit it off. Keep learning. If you do something and you said, oh, that didn't work, it's okay. Admit it. Own up to it and say, okay, we're going to do this instead. Be as real as you can. Be as honest as you can with your boarders. It shows that you respect them. They will respect you greatly for it. They'll also trust you more with your honesty. And even when you've made a mistake and you've apologize, it makes for a complete picture of what a sound business looks like for a boarding stable. So anyways, that's it for tonight. We got to go. We're at 1:07. You guys were awesome. If you'd like to check out my book, please do. A step-by-step guide to starting and running a successful horse boarding business. I guarantee you there's things in here that I'll get you thinking about that you wouldn't have thought about before. We talk about the finances, herd management, everything you can think about. And you can also, I'll have these videos on Facebook and also on my website, probarnmanagement.com, and my other books are on there. And if you have any questions, shoot them to me. And you guys are awesome. Thank you for joining me tonight. And sorry about my dog Daisy. She kept barking. My husband was supposed to take care of that. And but anyways, thank you. You guys are awesome. And wishing you many blessings in your horse business, and God bless you, and we'll see you next Monday. Bye-bye.